Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe Shop Shop. This week we're going to be working on the Ke10, but I'm going to show you some stuff first. Alright, so first before we jump into the Ke10, I just want to show you some stuff, some updates in the backyard. It's a whole lot cleaner than it was. It's still kind of messy over there, but I'll show you what's happened. So the huge white box shipping container thing that has left an imprint on the dirt is gone. So that's gone. I sold that. I sold the comma, which is good. So now it's just these two in the yard. And then this guy can go back in the shed once the Ke10's done and back together. And then this guy will get driven. And then I just need to clean up these last few things. And then the truck, which is currently the daily, can just get slotted in here, do some gravel down here. Just sort out the driveway, make it a whole lot nicer. So it's a huge difference. I've owned this place for like 4 years or 5 years or something. And the whole time it's had something massive in the driveway that was staying there as for the foreseeable future. So first it was the C30 chassis that sat there for a long time, then the container, and then both the C30 chassis and the container. And then there was a big gantry crane for a while. So all of that's gone. I'm super happy that it's not in my life anymore. I'm a bit bummed that I sold the container because it would have been really useful, but I just was sick of looking at it. So we've got the toy waste here, which will go in the shed, and the Falcon will be the daily. And then I need to seal this ladder rack thing off or scrap it or whatever and clean up that last little bit, and we're all good. The next absolutely massive thing in the yard is my dad's boat. So this is a, I think, 27-foot stacer. So it's a big boy. It's got like a 280 on the back or a 250 or I don't know, it's huge. It's an inline 6, 2.8 litre supercharged, I don't know how much. 250 horsepower. So this is a big fishing rig. He goes right out off the coast like 50 k's and goes tuna fishing and does all the crazy things, and I don't like the water. So it's a good mix. So got a new prop on this thing. Need to fix a pump for the bait tank at the back. We've got a couple lights on the trailer that need fixing. I just fixed the jockey wheel, so put a new bearing in that. And that's pretty much all you'll see of it. I just trying to help Dad out and fix some things. So that'll be gone soon. And then the yard's looking pretty good. Don't judge the lawn. I need to fix it and cut it and put a fence in and all that stuff. Let's get on to the Ke10. This is way more important. All right, so you saw in the last episode, I got the exhaust pretty much done. The headers still need to be painted and all that sort of stuff. But I need to finish this wiring. I'm sick of looking at it and sick of thinking about it. So I have a reasonable game plan. So I'm going to start as far away as I can and run everything through the engine bay, across the front here, down that guard and into the cab. So I need to just finish this off because this is going to stop me from driving and running and all that sort of stuff. So let's just get into that, get it done, get it out of the way, and I'll show you when I've got it all under control. So yesterday I probably spent half a day and did the wiring in this corner. So that all runs across the front now. The headlight plug is there. I just need to do another earth, and then with this side's all good. We've got the alternator and the starter motor, which I'm still waiting on the damn alternator. To finish up the wiring here. I'm going to pull these headers out, get them painted shortly. Then I need to clean this up because I don't like it. And then there's a bunch of connections in here that need to run to and from the cab. So get them finished up, and then the whole front will be wired, the whole car will be wired. There's a few things I've missed, which I'll do after the wedding. Radio, heater, the window sprayers, just a few little things. And I also want to get like new tags made up, which you can do. So there's a few things in there. So we'll do that. Then another thing I need to do is put the exhaust back on. So I painted this last weld like I said I was going to, with the stainless tip hanging at the back. So I'll put that on really shortly, and then that'll be done. So another thing we got is this piece that Aiden made for me. So this is CNC'd out of one block of aluminium. So it's super nice, and it goes onto the K70 steering column, something like that. And then the Ke10 indicator stalk actually goes over the top and screws into this guy. So this allows me to run the K70 steering column, but with the Ke10 steering wheel, indicator stalk, and the column cover. So it gets all of the modern stuff out of it, and we can still leave all the switches on the dash. And this guy is super wicked. So Aiden made me two of these, one for this car and one for the wagon. So if I decide to go that route down the road, I have one ready to go. So I'm pretty keen to get that on. That'll be after the dash is done and all the wiring's finished. Then I need to find a shifter. So that's another thing that's on the list. So hopefully I'm going to get the roof lining this week as well, and then I can get someone to come and put the windows in. So there's a few things to do. There's going to be a bit of off-camera progress, I think, because it's all kind of long and boring stuff, but I'll update you as I go. Alright, so yesterday I finally got the exhaust tip on. She's a bit long, but once the bumper's on there, it will look less ridiculous, and then we can always cut it down. You do kind of want that exhaust tip a little bit past the bumper so you don't get all the petrol fumes and soot and stuff up the back of your car. The inside is pretty much unchanged. The front, I've taken the headers off, gave them some paint, so that's all good. The starter's in, hopefully for good. Still waiting on an alternator, which is driving me insane. Still waiting on a tail shaft, which is annoying me as well. So I'm still trying to get this wiring at the front all sorted. I'm struggling to do it in a neat way, and that's what I'm struggling with. If I can't do it in a nice way that I'm happy with, I can't get interested. So I'm just going to try and work on this today, and if I can get that done, I'll be happy. I'm going to spare you all the time-consuming fiddling with this. I've got this side pretty much buttoned up. It's just this corner with all the wires coming from both sides and all the stuff coming from the cab all needs to join together. So it's just irritating. I just want to do it neatly, and I'm struggling. So I'll just focus on that, and then we can get back into getting the rest of this back together. So just quickly, I'll show you the extractors. They're covered in heat paint. They look pretty decent for some ratty extractors. I cleaned them up as best I could. And obviously the main thing I did with these is that this bar here. I also got in with a die grinder and a sanding wheel and stuff, and just took this down a little bit, so now it matches the thickness of the intake manifold a bit better, so the nuts will actually seat flat, so it should be a bit easier to get it all tight. So someone's welded on a little bar just here, so I took a little bit off on every little spot, so hopefully that's a whole lot better than it was, and it actually seals up nicely and doesn't leak like crazy. Alright, so I'm getting a bit of a good start on this wiring. There's a bunch of stuff that I need to run to the cab. There's one wire that I've forgot to run from the cab to the engine, which is the starter trigger, so that's kind of important. So there's a couple more to add to this, and then they can all go up in there. And then I just need to sort out this mess that I don't like and the relays. So it's getting there. I just got a call from Sprints to say my alternator's here, so I'm going to go grab that and some more terminals, and then we can finish up this wiring once and for all, hopefully today. I've been hanging out with my little mate. He's super cute. Alright, it has been a long day. So I got all of this wiring over here buttoned up, the earths are all done. You can't really see any of the wiring, it's all right up in here, which is what the plan was. Then I've tidied up all around the battery, so the relays and stuff have all been rewired. Everything's just a lot tidier. It's still a little bit gross here, but that's probably the worst angle of it. I don't like this, but I don't have any other way around it. And then the main improvement is coming into this arch here. Got all the wiring all tucked away and all looking pretty good. So I need to go through and tape all the wiring loom up, that's pretty obvious, but I do want to make sure that all of it works first, because if I have to rewire stuff and it's all covered in tape, that's a huge job, and taping it itself is a huge job. Alright, so the next job to do is sort out all of these wires that come from the front of the car. So there's a lot of them are easy. This is like main power, got the dizzy wiring, coolant temp and all that sort of stuff, so it's all pretty easy, just needs to be done. And then there's probably a couple more things to add that I haven't thought about. I just realized a minute ago that I didn't have a coil power. So I have the wires from the dizzy to the coil, but I don't have any actual coil power. So that's not going to work. So I need to sort that out. And there's a few other bits and pieces, but as a whole, I feel a whole lot better about it. This front end was just doing my life in. So much better now. I put the washer tank in. The neatest way to run the wiring was over the top, which I don't like, but instead of doing a big loop here, it just goes out of the way. It'll blend in. Once all this stuff isn't red and green, it should all look pretty nice. That'll just be the only exposed wiring, and then there'll be a little bit at the back here just going across to the alternator. Huge progress. I'm sure you're all sick of wiring by now, I know I am, but it is huge progress. So this thing can start really soon. Alright, I'm not 100% sure what I filmed last on the Corolla. I've got a mate coming over tonight to help me just go through the wiring and put the battery on for the first time and just make sure that nothing's bad. So I just want to have a second set of eyes here to do that. So I'm going to clean all this out now, and then the interior, providing the wiring goes well, will all be done other than the shifter for now, and then when I get the roof lining and stuff I can do the rest. As for the engine bay, we are still all wired up other than the alternator, starter motor and the coil, which is just a 5-minute job of 3 wires here one main battery lead and then the coil wires, so that'll be pretty easy. Then I need to chuck the exhaust manifold on and the intake manifold and the carby on. I'm probably going to do that once we get the wiring sorted, because we don't need any of that for the actual wiring, so that'll be a tomorrow job. So I'm just going to get everything ready and hopefully ready to go for tonight, just the wiring side of things. And then tomorrow Dale's going to come over after work and try and get this engine started, run in, and just see how we go, I guess. Alright, so I've got the interior all emptied out. I've just got the dash clutch to the steering wheel and the indicator stalk. So I'm going to jump in here and do oil in the gearbox in just a second. And then the engine bay, I have put the belt on and the alternator on, so I can start getting wiring stuff in place. So I'm just going to jump inside, chuck oil in the gearbox, and then I'll chuck some in the engine, and then it can sit for like 24 hours before I need to try and actually get things moving. I have filled the engine, and then a few years ago I had a spare dizzy, so I made a oil priming. So just give that a run on the drill, and you can see all the oil up in the top of the engine here. So that's just a good way to prime the oil system before we actually try and run this thing. I'll do this again tomorrow, but just wanted to make sure it'll work now. So I just got back from getting a few parts and bits and pieces and bolts and stuff. I just realised that the sump plug is leaking, which is the one thing that I did get a new gasket for. So I'm going to have to pull that off, drain all the oil and start again. Deal with that in a minute. I just put the tail shaft in, that's bolted in properly now. It was just cable tied in place while I got some bolts. So the gearbox isn't leaking, which is good. And then Richo's going to be here shortly and we go through all the wiring, make sure everything works, and maybe try and turn it over tonight. Okay, I think I'm ready to go with this wiring test. Got the headlights just thrown in. They're literally just hanging by the plugs, so one of them will smash later. Got alternator in, got the new power wires made up. I still need to wire these three, so one for the starter and two for the alternator. And then we got to wire the coil, which is not very much work at all. I just need to do it. Got a drill in there to prime the oil system again. I just did that before and there's no oil on the floor, so I think I fixed that as well. Then coming to the inside, both the engine and gearbox have oil in them. All in here is ready to go. I just need to plug the indicator stalk back in and then grab the key and then put a little bit of fuel in it. So hopefully it'll register on the fuel gauge. And then the only thing I don't have plugged in that I can think of is the number plate light. So hopefully, shortly, this thing will have powered everything and hopefully it all works. So we'll see. Alright, we've checked everything. The gauge all works. Turn the key on, we get charge light, get crank. So let's put the dizzy and coil back on, and then just the cold and hot side, all the stuff that makes it actually run.
The side.
The side, where all the stuff is.
The distributor's still connected. We had spark.
That's novel. As soon as we've been chasing that for 20 minutes. Alright, so we spent a bit of time out here last night. Checked all the wiring. The only thing that was wired incorrectly was the headlight. So the high beam and low beam on this side are swapped around. That's easy fix. The only thing that wasn't working is the dizzy that I bought. So the electric dizzy that I bought apparently is missing a module thing. I don't know. I only got the dizzy when I bought it. I did buy it secondhand, so that kind of bit me. So I'm going back to a regular dizzy. So I've called Sprints and organised everything to do a new dizzy. He said that that's going to be hard because apparently Bosch is not making all the bits anymore. So we'll get what we can and make a dizzy work. This one did work. Yesterday we got spark, and then the other one I've got did work as well. Whether they work long term is another question, but they did produce spark on a single cylinder, so that's good to go. So I need to blank off one of these wires down here. I've taken one off of the coil, so we're just going back to a regular dizzy setup. The carby I've had a quick look at and deleted the fuel cutoff solenoid. I need a bung for that, so we'll get that later. I'm going to chuck the exhaust on shortly and just try and get the exhaust and the intake on and make everything fit. So as for the wiring down here, I need to zip tie them out of the way, but it all works, so it's all nice and neat. The plug for the alternator is a bit hard, so I need to have a bit of length here. So what I need to do is undo this guy and then like rotate the alternator out of the way and then get the plug out. Otherwise you cannot get the plug out, so that's fun. So I'll zip tie all that out of the way and get this side on, and then we'll go get some more parts. Alright, I've got the manifolds on. So that was pretty miserable. The exhaust manifold just really doesn't fit very well, and the exhaust fits so tightly against it I had to actually drop the exhaust to get that on there. And then a little bit of flexing is involved for the first and last bolt, I guess, like the front and the back bolt. So I got that done, thankfully. And then the rest of them were pretty easy. A few different Allen keys were needed. So I had to use the type with the little ball on the bottom to get a little bit of an angle for this bottom one here. That needed a regular Allen key with a spanner on the end. And then this one in here needed the angled type Allen key. The rest of them I could do with a ratchet and a Allen key socket. So that was pretty good. So now I'm just going to chuck the carby on and hopefully that doesn't have to come apart again. Alright, I've chucked the radiator in just quickly as a test fit, so that bolt down there does clear by this much now that I've trimmed it. Got hoses cut to length, so the top one's off a XA Falcon or something, and the bottom one's Ke10. Neither of them fit particularly great, but they both work, so just need to get some hose clamps for those. Then I've pulled off the bar that I made to hold the wiring in place, pulled that off, given that a bit of paint, so wait for that guy to dry and then I can install it all fully. We got the alternator on and all tensioned, got the exhaust and everything on properly. So I need to take the carby to the shop and get some plugs for the bungs and stuff, and some hose for the Dizzy to go to the carby for vacuum advance. And then hopefully they'll have leads for me, and then hopefully they got Dizzy rebuild stuff. They said they were struggling to find stuff, so we'll see how we go there. And then I'm reasonably close, I guess. I just would really like to actually rebuild the Dizzy properly and know that it works for sure before we try and fire this thing up. Alright, a few more parts to go on this thing. So I actually have a full set of leads finally. The set I've had has 3 for some reason. The carby's ready to go. I just got all the blank off plates, so they're just little rubber plugs that can go over the vacuum lines. I've got a brass taper plug and also bolts just in case one of them fits, hopefully. We've got a new cap, we've got a condenser, and we've got points. The rotor button is apparently out of stock and they're impossible to find, so I'm going to have to use one that I've already got, which is not the end of the world. Got new radiator, hose clamps, and we got the vacuum line for the Dizzy to carby. So hopefully rebuild a Dizzy and chuck all this stuff on and we should be really close. Alright, so the old crusty Dizzy is rebuilt. I got everything except for a rotor button, which I found a new one, or a very, very not used one. So I'm going to try and show you that I've got spark. So I'm just going to spin the Dizzy over by hand and you'll see the 4 sparks. If not, you should be able to hear it in the Dizzy itself. So let's chuck that in. Alright, I got the Dizzy in place, got the leads on. That's not acceptable. I'm going to have to redo that later because that's just stupid. This looks a bit stupid as well, but it'll do. So they're all a bit long. It seems to be right. The mark on the harmonic balancer is lining up with cylinder 1, so that's good. So I'm hoping that that's about where it should be. I need to find the hold down clamp and then grab a bolt, and then that will be done. I do need to rewire some stuff still. It's all just for testing. And then I'm going to try and get this carby on shortly. And I think that's about it. It should pretty much pick up fuel and fire. Alright, I've got this eBay carby pretty much ready to go. So the vacuum line that I'm going to run to the Dizzy is on the bottom here, just this hole here. The Ke10 manifold space that I was going to use would block that off. So if I use a Ke10 one, it's got this little relief in it, which lets the air work. So that'll go on there, bolt the whole thing on, so that'll fix that problem. And then the fuel cut-off solenoid that I pulled out earlier is a M8 by 1. So I don't have any bolts or anything I can block that off with. So I'm just going to, for now, jerry-rig that to the battery and turn it on, which will let it run and let fuel through. So I'm going to bolt this all on now, and hopefully it's all good. I can test this, just be really quiet and touch it to the battery, and it should all be all good. Everything else is blocked off. The only thing I'm unsure about is this guy here, which I don't know what's supposed to go there, because I don't have another carby that is the same. And then that's pretty much it. So we're going to try and run it with this open and hope that's not a problem. I blocked this guy off and I sprayed stuff in there and it didn't come out anywhere, so hopefully we're all good. Fuel line needs to be hooked up, obviously. Bolt it down. So chuck this on and then ready for start, basically. I need to get fuel. I know I've got spark. This will be the air. So I just need to check I can get fuel to the carby and we're pretty much ready to start it. Okay, I think I've got everything done. The carby, I've tried to put the fuel into the bowl. We need to suck it from the tank. I can't get it come through. So I'm going to give it a couple cranks and it may fire for a little second. I think timing's correct. I think everything's hooked up. So let's see how we go. I think that may have been a little backfire out the back. So I'll try and put some more fuel in and we'll give it another go. I do have a fire extinguisher ready to go. It'll be something obvious. It always is. The jet is working, so I have got fuel in the carby. So it turns out this could be a rookie error. So there is 2 marks on the front of the balancer. Neither of those are your timing mark. The one on the back is your timing mark. So I've marked it with a bit of paint pen so I can actually see it pretty good. So I've reset all the timing, the base timing. So we'll give it another go and hopefully that fixes the problem. Well, that's the closest I've gotten. Come on, you dog. Yeah, boy. Alright, so this next bit is where I kind of forgot to film a little bit. So I'm just going to fill in where I can and give you a bit more information to clear up what we're filming and what we're trying to do. So the first thing is that engine just started, but it's idling a little low and the timing's obviously wrong. So what we wanted to do is get this thing to fire up pretty much straight away and do about a 2000 RPM for a consistent amount of time. So consistent RPM for a long period of time to run the cam and the lifters into each other. This is all of the stock stuff from this engine, so it's not new lifters and it's not a new cam, so they should be fine. Dale, when he built the engine, labelled and numbered everything, so they all went back in the same hole that they were in, all the lifters that is. So none of this is actually necessary, but we just want to be 110% sure. So we just wanted to run it for sort of 10-15 minutes at 2000 RPM and just get it all nice and seated properly. So this next clip, we skipped forwards probably an hour or so in time. Dale has come over. He's going to help me run the engine in because he built this engine. So he wants to be here for that, which is awesome. And another set of hands and another set of ears and thinking and stuff would be helpful. So that's good. So what I've done is adjusted the timing, adjusted the idle, so it should bark to life at about 2000 RPM, and it should just be able to be run straight in. So let's jump into that when Dale is here.
That's what you meant to do.
Alright, so we got the engine to run at the correct RPM and fire up to life. Then we couldn't get fuel to the carby, so that was just with a bit of fuel down the carby and in the bowls. So we couldn't get any fuel from the tank itself to the carby. We only just kept topping up the carby, so it was a bit of a pain. So we started diagnosing the fuel tank and fuel lines. So we were putting air pressure in the lines just a tiny little bit. It's really important that you only put a few PSI, like 3 or 4 PSI in at a time. You don't want to pop the fuel tank, you don't want to pop a line off, you don't want to make anything leak. So we're being very careful and just trying to diagnose step by step. So the first step was to check the pump, make sure we were getting vacuum there. And literally like...
Well, that's not vacuum. Yeah, so why is it not coming through then?
Well, that sounds like we've got issues at that end.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'll try it again while you can hear. Yeah, it's not getting through.
The absolute tiniest bit in here.
So the second step was to check the line under the car to the fuel tank. So I disconnected just in front of the fuel tank and we put air through the center section of the car, that fuel line, to make sure it was unblocked and clear.
Ready?
Yeah. Nothing back here. Oh. Go again. Yeah, I'm getting that. Yep.
That's tiny.
I wonder if it's the hose out of the tank. Alright, so we've narrowed it down to the fuel line not sucking fuel from the tank. The line under the car seems fine. We've blown air in the engine end and we're getting it out by the wheel here. And then the hard line off the tank that goes through the floor, we're thinking that's blocked or kinked. So I'm going to have to pull that off and see and hope. Alright, we have found the problem. It's this original hard line that I cleaned the outside of and definitely didn't clean the inside of. We're not getting any air through this, which means we won't get any fuel through it, and it's also got a pretty decent kink in it. So I'll see if I can find another one, and then we'll chuck it back in. Alright, so we've narrowed it down to this little piece that comes out of the fuel tank. It's pretty kinked and pretty blocked, so we're going to try and cut the kink out, and then I'll work on one half, Dale can work on the other half, try and clean it out, and then we'll just put a piece of rubber hose there for now.
Use our trophy pipe cleaner.
cable tying a drill. Seems to work. So we're going to try and clean both halves and then just use a bit of rubber line there for now. And then I'll sort out something better once we've got this car running. Alright, so we've just cut the kink off, and the kink is actually fine itself. It's just a bit of a restriction, but if you look in here, it won't focus. But that is blocked. So that's what was stopping us. That is full of gunk. Zip tying the drill. Look at all the crap that's coming out of it. Safe to say that was probably the problem. Alright, so we've got that hose from the tank to the hardline, getter rigged. It seems to be clear now. So Dale's up front. He's going to put a bottle on the fuel line. I'm going to put a little tiny little bit of air pressure. I can't stress that enough. A little tiny bit in the fuel tank and try and get fuel up here.
Yeah, I got fuel.
Hell yeah. So once we got fuel to the engine, it was time to fire this thing up and run it at 2000 RPM for 10 to 15 minutes.
946.
Well, that was noisy.
Yeah. Yeah, your neighbours definitely love you.
Sorry, everybody that is involved. Sweet.
One less thing to worry about.
Let's go inside. So as you can see, it's idling, running pretty well. The run-in went really well. It didn't climb on the temp gauge. Nothing leaked. So there was 2 hoses on the top of the rocker cover that I haven't hooked up to where they're supposed to go. So they were breathing oil just a little bit, which was then getting hit by the fan and just pushing it onto the firewall because that fan's pretty angry. So there was a little bit of oil leaking here and there. I think once I block up that rocker cover and plumb it to where it's supposed to be, we'll be fine. But that's just something to keep in mind for later. So another thing we found on the run-in is that we have an exhaust leak. So it sounds like it's coming from the front, so where the extractors and the head meet, I imagine. That's pretty much the worst spot I could have had it because it's really hard to actually get in there. So I'm going to probably ignore it for a bit and drive the car, see if it's still there, see if it is somewhere else. I don't want to just sit and idle this thing and look around. I want to just get in it and drive it and put some load on it and try and bed the rings in properly. So I might have to drive it around with an exhaust leak for a bit and then fix it up later, but that's not a huge issue. So with the run-in done, I'd just like to say thanks to all of my mates that have helped me with this car so far. There's still a lot to go, obviously, but there was a big few steps out of the way. The engine's in and runs, the gearbox is on, which was a huge project in itself. The wiring is all in and seems to all work, except for that one headlight I need to fix. Everything we've done so far seems to work, so the next project is the brakes, but that's going to have to wait for another episode. So I hope you're as excited as I am for the engine to be running. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.